And one of our biggest things, that city or Forest Park, we get compliments on that. You guys need to know it. I mean, it is a great thing. And, you know, people come from all over. We had them from, well, we had 7 states that registered with us. We had California, Virginia, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. They were all through here, and the ones from California brought 3 tractors. So, I mean, it wasn't like they were just visiting. They came here. And so, you know, we had a really nice show. And next year, we're gonna feature John Deere, and so that'll be our 28th. Then in 24, we're gonna have the Massey Expo in North America. We were scheduled to have it in 20, and then COVID shut it all down, and we got it back 4 years later, so 24 we'll have it, and that'll be a national show, and it's Massey, Harris, Ferguson, and everything related to them, and they think it'll be a heck of a show because they've never had one this far west or south. So most of the Massey stuff's to the north and northeast. And, but just wanted to, like I said, thank you guys. And everybody's got along with us so good. I mean, the fire, police, ambulance, city workers, I mean, your park guys are great. And they just do everything they can for us. And so I don't know who I need to give this to, but we've got you a $1,000 check for the City of Ottawa Park Department.
There you go.
And
Zach.
so like for them to put it back into something for the park,
Awesome.
you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you, and thank you certainly for the compliments. You know, these guys get a lot of flack during the year about things that
Yeah.
aren't done to, you know, some what people think it should be. So I'm sure and Dennis will relay it to them. I'm sure they will
That's what I'm
appreciate
saying. And
all the good words.
we appreciate them guys. I mean, they've got it mowed up so nice, and which we try when we're done, we go back over it, picking up everything. And so we try not to leave it a mess. And this year it was dry, so we didn't have to
Yep.
fix the rest of the
Yep.
park up.
For sure.
And but while Adam's here, I've also got a DARE check for them. They have security at night, and so we donate back to the DARE Club $400. And
Awesome.
Adam, I'll give that to you. Thank you. And you're welcome. And but that's all the time I'm gonna take, you guys, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It'd be
Thank
nice, Mr. Reese, if we could get a check presentation picture maybe with you. I mean, those are huge donations, so
Yeah.
thank you so much.
I
Yeah.
don't take very good pictures.
I don't know, our IT guys are pretty good about finding your good side.
You guys, do you want to?
I'm doing it all the way.
Yeah, you got it.
I know.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We'll wait a few minutes for Commissioner Clayton to come back.
It was really nice. That's awesome.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Sorry I put you on the spot there.
All right, that'll move us on to, hold on,
Do you really want that off?
items to be placed on our regular city commission agenda, which
Can
is
you
our
read
minutes.
that?
I'm trying to, hold on.
Your
Somebody
phone will
bring the
show
phone.
you,
There
yeah.
Which is our minutes from our November 2nd study session. Commissioners, did you have a chance to read that over? Are there any changes? And if not, are you okay with moving that on to our next agenda?
Yep.
Sounds good. All right, that'll move us on to items for presentation and discussion, which is item 1, which is our continued discussion of our water utility rates.
What was that?
Commissioners, would
Can
you
you take, is it just all or nothing?
It's all or nothing.
Just leave them
Like,
on.
it's okay. Okay.
You have the presentation.
Okay, I'm sorry I rushed that. There was so much pressure. Okay, so this is our second conversation about water utility update and rate discussion. And we put together a little bit different look for you this time, which was to go back and look at a couple different options that came from you guys as opportunities to see if they would result in anything different, both for the utility and on the customer side. And I think it's important to talk about a little bit the reason why we're even having this discussion. And I may have rushed that in our first conversation a little bit. So if you can go to slide 2. Thank you. So our last water rate increase was in 2018, and our expenditures over time have continued to rise under the current rate structure, with the cost of materials for water line construction, repairs, production of water overall, and that caused our fund balances to start declining. So whenever your expenditures are above your revenues, it's going to impact the bottom line. The factors that we're considering in generating revenue with any type of rate increase, regardless of what the amount is that this is an enterprise fund and we can only generate revenue from user fees. These dollars aren't coming from anywhere else. I think that's important for the customers to understand. And that's true of each one of the individual utilities that we are going to discuss. And then we do have a small customer base. And so it does take longer to generate revenue. So just because we do an increase in 1 year does not necessarily mean it's going to generate enough revenue in total to wipe out any one of those brand new projects that might be coming on as part of operations in our utility. Next slide, please. We did have a short conversation about the charge description, and right now it's called a demand charge, and we talked about maybe changing the name of that slightly. And so we have two types of fees in our current structure. One's the demand charge, which is an amount that's charged monthly regardless of your usage, and then there's the usage rate. And so those are the two fees that are included in the structure for the water utility. And so we had just a short conversation about what else could we call that. As a group, we talked about not necessarily liking the word demand charge, and so we talked about using the word base charge instead of minimum charge is also an option, but a lot of times minimum charge it's taken as in the very minimum for usage, and we don't want to confuse those two things, because even if you have zero usage, there is still a usage charge, so it really isn't just a minimum charge. So if you are okay with changing the naming of it to base charge, you can always tell us later, but if you have any feedback on that now, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
base, something similar to that.
Change
I'm
it to
assuming it
base.
would, on the bill, be water base, because right now it's water demand. I'm sure we were at a character limit.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
There
probably
is,
the case,
yeah.
yeah, yes.
Yeah, so, I don't know whether water base. it
Yeah,
would
we'll
get
have to
in
come
there.
up
Okay, because I was looking at like
Change it.
the sewer surcharge is SWR surge, like is it?
Yes, there is a character on
Okay.
that. I don't know exactly what it is. But yes, we would have to
I
work
think,
within that in
I
our
think we
system.
have consensus of the base charge now.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, another question we had, next slide, please. I don't know if you can see this, but it was in your packet. So you had asked us, in general, how much does the average customer use? So the blue on the bottom, and these are by month over a year's time frame. So typically anywhere between 64 and 65% to 78% of our customers are using between 0 and 5 CCFs. And then we have a much smaller portion of our customer base that's using around the 20%, and then a very much smaller customer base. And now these are just residential, but about 5% in most months, but in the summer months, you can see that does jump to 14% are using anywhere above 10 CCFs. I know you mentioned you used about 30, so those are those ranges where customers might fall. And that's important because when we started talking about those costs for the customers, we had broke them down just on some generalized
ranges, and so that would be per CCF, and so you would have to calculate that for each one of those. Do you have questions about our general consumption? Now, this is just residential. We didn't include commercial on this. Okay, next slide, please. We also had a question about our 10-year cash balance history and what that might look like. So we could get a picture of where we've typically fallen out for our fund balance, and also the percentage of the fund balance of our expenditures, because that was an important part of our conversation, is that we want to target anywhere between 15 and 20% of our fund balance, or of our expenditures in our fund balance. So this is a 10-year look at that. These came from our audited financials. These are unencumbered cash balances, but you can see that we typically are ranging anywhere between 35 and in the last couple of years, 50 to 60%. But those last couple of years are anomalies because we purposefully held back on large purchases, large projects, minimal maintenance. We did those things to make sure that we could start in those years where we weren't certain exactly where we would land on during the COVID years.
And I would say maintenance is one of the things that we never minimize, but we did hold back on any kind of capital expenditures at that point in time because of what was going on with the economy, because of what was going on with COVID and those kinds of things. So I don't want anybody to get the idea that somehow or another we minimize the maintenance on our water treatment plant. We did not.
Thank you. This didn't explain correctly. So do you have questions on this? You can see that the trend lines do match, right? So as your expenditures go up, your fund balance drops, and as your expenditures come back down, your fund balance tends to come back up. So they do work together. I know that's probably assuming that does actually work that way, but we have not had a rate increase since 2018. So as you can see, the trend line would have, under normal conditions, continued to trend downward, but because they've made some of those adjustments in the past few years, you can see that it trended upward. So what we projected for you over the next couple of years was them getting back to normal business, where they were doing more of the capital improvements that they had delayed during the last couple of years, and also some of those capital purchases, which were the replacement of vehicles and equipment, those types of things. Are there any questions on this slide? No. All right, so we did prepare 3 options for you here, and I really packed a lot onto one page, so I'd like to look at each one of the pieces individually so that you can understand what we tried to propose here for you. I think that the important part of these options for not just you, but our customers to understand is anytime that we are talking about rates for any one of our utilities, it's a tough discussion. And that oftentimes, and I'm stealing this, I may not say it exactly right from our city manager, but oftentimes we do put off any large increases because of the impact to the customer, or trying to make sure that they're absolutely necessary. And in this case, we didn't have small incremental increases over time. And so it's put us in a situation where we have a declining fund balance. And so we do need to do something. I can't say that any one decision that you make is going to be the wrong decision, because it's going to be moving us in the direction of managing this. And in any one decision, we're just going to have to manage it a little different until we get to the point where we're to the point that we want to be with our fund balances. And any one decision is never going to correct this in 1 year. So it does need to be a long-term approach to this utility over time. So that's how we've approached this. And again, this is, we're putting it in your hands, where we're putting these options out in front of you so you can see what that might do for the utility and also the impact to the customer over time. So option A is what we presented the first time. And I just wanted to show you in I guess, recap what we were talking about. And I did change a part of the look here so that you can see it in a different light. The total revenue in the graph to the right, at the top right corner, the total revenue, if you do a 10% increase every year for 5 years, you can imagine that's how your trend line is, right? It's a gradual increase over time, and that's the orange line is our expenditures, and those expenditures stay the same in every one of our scenarios. We're only focused here on the revenue. The middle chart that we provided you is what we talked about last time, the ending fund or the ending balance if we were to do this option over the next 5 years and what our target ending balance is. As you can see, it doesn't get us there in year 1, 2, 3, and 4, we're getting closer. In 5, we're getting there. What we talked about in the first presentation was right now, we pretty much know where we need to be on capital expenditures over the next 3 years. But in years 4 and 5, some things could change and we may move those around. I don't want you to focus on the ending balance so much in year 5, because that's not all revenue driven. It's actually because our capital expenditures were less in that year than they were in the previous year. So that also has to do, you can see on the trend line for the expenditures that they go up, but then they fall drastically in 27, which also causes a higher ending fund balance. So that is not all revenue driven, but it is the impact based on how we have it forecasted right now. The impact down below, we added a couple of additional tiers so that you could see the differences. So remember in the one chart we showed you, the 70% of our customers use anywhere between 0 and 5 CCFs. So we did put in 1, 4, 7, and 30 before we just had 1 and 5 for you. So you can see, and we broke it down by month, and by month in each year, this is the difference from the previous year. So in the current year, I believe the rate is, say, $17.33 is the cost of a bill for 1 CCF in this year in 2022. So in year 1, which would be 2023, that's an increase of $2.36 per month. And so we talked about the per month. What we did at the very end is the 5-year total increase. That's actually 12 months per year times 5 years, or the change over 5 years. And that's how much more in 5 years they would be paying for that same service as today. And so I know it's in the same table, and that might be a little bit confusing that it's in the same table, but the first 5 columns are by month, and the last one is the 5-year total impact to that customer, say at the 1 CCF over 5 years, it would be $159.93 increase based on 10% every year for 5 years. Okay, does that make sense how we put it in this table for you? Okay, do you have questions on this option? Do you want to move on and then we can come back and discuss? How would you like to
Any
proceed?
questions on this one? Let's just go to the next one.
Okay. So this option B we proposed here was that we did the $1 annual base charge increase, which was also on option A. And then we did a declining annual rate increase. So at 10% in year 1, 8% in year 2, 6%, 4, and 4. So over the 5 years, you have a declining, it is still an increase, but it's less of an increase over time. With the idea that in year 1, we generate more of that revenue towards the bottom line and decrease from there. As you can see, it's the revenue trend line is just a little bit smaller of a trend line than in the original one. Same expenditures. You can see that your bottom line doesn't increase as quickly over 5 years because you have a difference between the 10-8, 10-6, 10-4, 10-4. So you can see what that impact is there on the ending balance line. In this scenario, you have the per month cost for each one of the years to your customer, and the 5-year total increase is $119 over the 5 years is how much the increase would be at the end of 5 years. Do you have questions on this scenario? I know I only touched on it, so I don't want to leave anything unanswered.
In each column, that's that annual increase.
over the previous year,
Yeah,
right?
from the
So,
previous year.
so 23 would be $2.36 per month, and then in year 2, it would be an additional $2.20, and then in year 3, $1.97. Option C, this is a different approach. This is taking our current base charge, which is $3.69, and increasing it to $10 one time, and that would be in 2023, and then it would remain at that $10. So actually, the chart over to the right does not actually show you the difference from 22 to 23. So you would see an increase in your revenue like this before you start to see that trend line across. And then we did build in a 5% annual rate increase across there to give it that a smaller incremental increase every year over year, so that you would still continue to have some sort of additional revenue generated each year to offset increased operating expenses. Now that percentage could be anything you want, but we did try it at 3.5%, and it didn't quite get us where we needed to be. And you can see that it does generate significantly more revenue in year 1, and then the additional revenue, tapers off. So down below, you'll see a more significant impact to the customer in year 1, and then significantly smaller increases across years 2 through 5. The total impact for the customers on that one would be about $120 after the 5-year span. So the very first one, I think, was $159, and then options B and C, they were about the same, $119 and $120. And that, again, I'm only picking the first tier. That's only a very small piece of our customer base, so I don't want to just focus on that. The rest of it is there for you to look at. Next slide, please. So this, did not come through very well. The colors didn't come through very well, but we just placed inside of this chart that you've already seen the options that we presented to you. I'm just going to show you if you don't mind. These 2 options right here are the 2 new ones. So this is the one where we sit today at the top of this, or at the bottom, if you will. And then these 2 increases, remember that a $1 increase to the base charge plus 10% annually, those were actually options A and B. That would be just the first year. And then this is your second option with the $10 increase to the base charge. So, I'm sorry, these 2 right here, $49.17 and $52.58. So it does still leave us in the bottom of the chart, but like I said, that is not really where our concern lies at this point in how we compare to other utilities, as much as it does what are we trying to accomplish for the utility and for the customer alike.
And keep in mind, this comparison is for these other communities is what they are charging today. This is what we would be charging 5 years from now. And they're likely going.
This is just year 1. We only did year 1 because we don't know what they're going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't have a good comparison, so you're right.
Nonetheless, all of these communities, you're gonna see an increase in what they are doing.
So can you explain why, so somebody's gonna look at this and say, wait a minute, why are we gonna charge $15.85 per unit rate when somebody else is $4.46? Can you explain, why we're different there? So
Yes.
unit rate per 1,000 gallons.
Mhm. So the difference is that if you look at a large utility, they're charging a lower unit rate. I always use Water One as an example. I mean, they have hundreds, thousands of customers, and we have 5,400, 5,600, something like that. And so the base charge is one amount charged every month, the same amount charged every month to every customer. So it's a very static revenue. So the smaller your customer base, the less amount of revenue that comes in from that base charge every month, which causes you to have a higher unit rate in order to make up the difference there. If you have a much larger utility with a larger customer base, you can charge a higher base rate and a very low unit rate and then still accomplish the same thing. We just don't have that opportunity with a smaller customer base.
Which is kind of what I was pointing out here, because the 446 that I was comparing to in our unit rate, they're actually charging 2163 for a base rate.
Yes,
So they're making it up in the base and, and not on the unit rate.
that's right. Yeah, and we probably could have sorted this up.
Well, and the reason I
different
wanted to
ways.
bring that up is because anybody can find the facts that they want to find if they want to prove us wrong when we say, hey, we're comparable. And that's what they would go to, is look at the unit rate. They're charging 3 times what what anybody else around us is. But I also want to bring to the fact that to the point that our base rate is less than most of them, so.
That's right. And I guess just as a reminder, we talked about this last time. This was a comparison that was put together by another city that we're using. And it is current rates at this time, and I'm certain there probably have been rate increases already proposed by other utilities for next year, but those aren't worked into this equation. And then we do charge on CCF here. This was put together in per 1,000 gallons, which is what some other utilities charge by. So it isn't a perfect comparison, but it is a good way to take a look at other utilities or compare us.
So, Matt, can you go back one, please? Yeah, one more, thank you. So the total, just on that one CCF, that 120.96, that's what the customer would be paying more
Yes,
for
over at the end of 5 years. So per one CCF.
per month, per,
It's figured for
Just
60
in
months.
total.
That would be 60 months.
60 months, over
60
60 months.
months,
It's a-
yeah.
Over 60
120
months,
divided by
that's the
60
amount they would
so
have paid.
$2 more a month.
Basically, yes. In this one specifically, in year one, it would be $6.99
Right,
more per month
right.
because of that one time, and
Sure.
then 72 cents. But if you look at the other ones, yes, somewhere around $2
Yep.
per month.
Okay.
Yes.
The other one would be roughly 3, somewhere right around there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. And I guess I might just mention that any one of these options, we've already talked, we're gonna go back and look at, how do we make operational needs and capital improvement projects fit where we're going to be based on whatever decision is made. We know that we have things that we have to do. We will find a way the best way to get them done, to finance them, to do whatever we need to do to fit within that structure. The problem is that if we don't generate enough revenue over time, if we did nothing for an extended period of time, we really would have to cut back on our operations. We can't do that. We have requirements. We also have an obligation to our customers. So we know that that's not really an option to do nothing. But we we can make any other decision, that we need to, whether that's an inclining rate over time. We can run some other options. You could slice and dice this 100 different ways. So when we had our conversations, we could have done that and provided you with another 10 scenarios for you to consider. And if you want more of that same work, we will absolutely do that for you.
The other thing that I like to point out when we're having these conversations is we're talking about utilities, we're talking about enterprise funds. And I often get the question of, why are our enterprise funds not managed better? And I think the reason that I get that question is because a lot of people don't understand that we are one big unit. We are municipal government, and there are transfers that come out of all of the utility funds to the general fund. Those transfers have a huge impact on what the bottom line looks like on the enterprise funds. It's the way we do business, the way we've always done business, but I think a lot of people don't recognize that. And so I think it's important to point that out. Part of what we're doing here is money that goes to the general fund.
And the rest of that conversation is that if you were running this utility as a business, separate from the government agency, you would have an HR director, a finance director, you would have all of those
people that this utility functions with by using, and we spread that out across the entire organization, including our utilities. And that's what those transfers are intended to cover, is the rest of the business cost. And so again, it's tough to have a conversation about this as a business, but that's exactly, the difficult part of every one of our utilities. So I don't think that we need to have a decision today, because our whole goal here was to have the conversation last week, have the conversation this week. We would like to know if you like any of these three scenarios, if you still want to continue the conversation. Our goal was to maybe come up with one or two that you like here, hold those aside, have the rest of our conversations about the other two utilities, come back and look at a cumulative impact when we talk about the ordinances at the first meeting in December, I believe. If you'll advance one more slide. There you go. So we would have a study session in December after we talk about wastewater and electric, make some decisions on what those ordinances might look like, and put them on your second regular meeting. But if you can give us an idea of what you want that to look like, then we won't have to make so many changes at the very end, and we can show you what those scenario impacts look like combined.
I'm in favor of the $10 increase to the base and then the 5% annual. I think down the road that a commission is gonna have a discussion about, a typical increase every year like we should have been having. And I think that 5% will be comparable to what they may decide. So it's not a huge increase, it's not a huge decrease. I think it's gonna be right where the customer is gonna be used to. So that's why I'd be in favor of the 10 base, 5 annual.
I know for me, I'm actually opposite. I'm in favor of the little less impact initially, just worrying about how much that could impact a household at one given time. So I would have to say, for me personally, I'm a fan of A or B. I'm not particularly one over the other, ideally probably B, but those two options are kind of equal in my mind right now.
Do you have concerns with B and C? Because it looks like 2026, is that showing our inbounds in the red?
Yes, it is. So something that happens when you forecast out all of your expenditures and all of your revenues, typically you will not spend 100% of your budget expenditures or 100% of what you planned in any one year, right? Because we budget conservatively in our revenues and probably a little bit overestimated on our expenditures. So typically, as you saw in that cash balance chart, typically you will see more of a rollover to your cash balance than what we planned, because we don't ever truly spend 100% of what we think we will in any one year. So yes, it concerns me because it's a negative number on paper. But I do think that the rest of our conversation has been, we're going to continue to review this annually. And if we get to the end of year 2, and we think that year 4 is drastically going to be a bad scenario, we're going to need to have another conversation, and we may have to make an additional adjustment or do something different. But until we see how we're performing over the next couple of years, it's going to be difficult to really say what that projection is. This is just simply math. And
Yeah, we try to plan for worst case scenario, and that's really what this is worst case scenario. That's what that would look like.
Does this include, I remember there was the $200,000, right? A year we were trying to put away. Is this with that or without that?
it is with it.
Okay.
And of course, if there's not enough money, if we're not where we need to be, we're not gonna be able to set that aside. Same way with the equipment money, you're not going to, those are the things that you set aside first and find another way to do business until there's enough cash to do those things.
I am in favor of taking a deeper dive into B and C. I like C right now. It's a $6.31 month increase to your base charge, but that means if you're using the very minimum, you're gonna pay $6.30 more. And so, for those that choose to use minimum, that's fine. Just know that it's just gonna cost you just a little bit more just to have the ability to use. And so you still get your minimum, it's just gonna cost you, an extra value meal, or probably less than an extra value meal now. That's right, half of an extra value meal, or not quite half, but 3/4. If B is an option that we're gonna consider, I really wish that we would consider doing a $2 or $3 increase to the base charge, because the reality of it is the base charge is $3. And if you go and you wash one load of laundry and you use absolutely zero water, the rest of your house is empty, and you flush the toilet 3 times, you're paying $3.69. And I think that we need to look at equalizing that just a little bit. So I'm not in favor of A, I'm in favor of B if we want to increase the annual base charge, or C, where that is at.
I as well am torn. I do think the base charge increase to $10, kind of thinking through it, I see it almost initially as affecting the lowest users the most. As someone who uses a lot of water, apparently, a lot more than most people, I guess. I see that base charge increase affecting people closer to the power, people who are probably using the least amount of water, who that increase would affect the most, I would say. I think getting to $10, like Commissioner Kaler was saying, kind of increasing it incrementally to that goal is good. I mean, I do like option A. I like, from a business perspective, the ending balances a lot better. I would be scared of red numbers in time, and being in this position again and being in the middle of, a 10% annual increase, or a 5%, pardon me, annual increase, and we look and we say, we're gonna be in the red, and then we have to do it again in the middle of a planned increase. And I know we can obviously do that, but I would almost rather have our 5-year plan kind of locked. And then, maybe after this, we only go back to a 3% or something along those lines. So for me, I would be more of an option A. Obviously, no one wants those impacts. I don't want those impacts on my bill. But I think that keeps us operating as a business. We're not a for-profit, but we also have to be for in case of emergencies, having some savings, a reserve fund, it makes more sense.
And Commissioners, that is the only option that we are presenting here that actually gets us there. These other options don't get us to that ending fund balance that we were after. Even if we perform better than what we're showing here, we still will not get to that ending fund balance that we're after.
Just to add to kind of what you said and kind of what you were saying, or something in the middle on this option B, just some additional fast math, which is dangerous. So a $1 base charge increase generates about 63,000. So if you were to increase that base charge one time to $2 or to $3, if you were to generate another $180,000 each year, because remember, that's once you jump into there, it stays, that would start to have an impact on your bottom line. It doesn't get us all the way there, but it would definitely make another difference. So I think that it's kind of in the middle of what you're all saying, is it's in the middle of all three of these options, quite frankly. So I don't know if that's another option you want us to throw together and just show you. Maybe we could spend 5 minutes at the next meeting and we could just show you that one additional option, see if you like it, kind of nail down which two you want to hold in our back pocket for later down the road, and then we can use that if you would like, and instead of just trying to throw it out in front of you and fast math, then we can do that.
Well, maybe we look at what actually we believe would get us to that ending fund balance. Present that, and then maybe something on each side of it so that you can see what those increases do. I think that could make some sense.
And I'm a fan of that. I think $2 base charge increase or $3 even. The initial shock of the $10 was my only concern. So I think if we did come to more of a middle ground or a little bit lower on that, I think it could make an impact and but not be so shocking to some customers all at once.
I agree. I think the $10 is like a good goal. So you almost over the 5 years of a $2 every year base increase and an increase in rate, that would slowly kind of get us there.
If you
Keep in
did,
mind, it's only a $6
Yeah.
increase.
yeah.
So, I
That's
mean,
600.
yeah, it's,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
we're
true.
only talking up to 10, so it'd be
Yeah.
at 631,
Yeah.
as Commissioner Kaler mentioned. So, I mean, and yes, a 2 or 3 would be right in that middle somewhere, so if that's a discussion that we wanna have.
I mean, if we took the very first year and just rounded it up to $6, that's a $2.31 increase. And then the next 2 years be $2, you're 6, 8, 10. You're at 10 on year 3. We're exactly where.
That would make a significant difference at that
I
point.
think, yeah, I think if you could work on that, show us next week, like you said, we'll spend 5 minutes on it or 10 minutes, whatever we need. But I think that's kind of the direction we're heading, is that middle ground of kind of, lowering that base rate, catching up in the long run. I think that's what we're looking for.
Okay, all right, we can do that.
Great,
Yeah, all right, very good. Thank you for your input. It's very helpful.
thank you.
Thanks to all our work putting this together too.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
So that'll move us on to our discussion on our 2022 budget amendments.
All
Thank you,
right.
Dennis.
Thank you.
So in your packet, there is a state form that we're required to fill out for budget amendments. And the summary page is really, gives you a breakdown of what we're proposing here. I'm gonna talk for a second about what a budget amendment is. So when we put together a budget annually, those are all expected costs. Anything can change after you've put that budget together, and in most cases, that's exactly why we're doing a budget amendment. If you don't budget a reserve balance each year, while you may have a cash balance available, if you didn't budget that reserve balance, then you have to do a budget amendment for the state budget process. So budget amendments are only using either additional revenue that you've generated, additional cash balance that you carried over, or something that's already available to you. It doesn't generate more tax dollars. It doesn't, it simply allows you to make purchases that you might have, that were unplanned at the time when we put the budget together, but were still purchases necessary for any one of these pieces of operations. The idea here is that if we have a conversation about these budget amendments today, we'll talk about them again next Monday, and then we'll publish a notice of public hearing. And that public hearing would be held just like your normal budget process, but on Wednesday, December 7th at the 7 p.m. commission meeting.
What's the latest date you need to publish this?
I don't have the calendar in front of me, but we would have, I think, between 12 and 14 days. We have to have 10 calendar days with any budget notice. Any notice of public hearing for budget. It's different from a planning notice, which is typically 20 days, but this is 10. So the way that we have this listed, I didn't put together a PowerPoint because I think these are pretty straightforward. We tried to give you a description of each of the funds that would have a budget amendment. The auditorium fund, this was
because we received that shuttered venue grant later in 2021, it allowed us to book bigger shows, which generated more revenue, but we also had additional expenditures in those event deposits and costs that went along with them. So those were unbudgeted expenditures. We didn't have as much of a reserve budgeted in the auditorium fund in 21, or for 22. And so this is just allowing us to use those revenues that offset the expenditures that we incurred because of those additional shows. In the library fund, this is a little bit different fund because we do distribute everything we receive. Typically, when we put together a revenue forecast, we're very conservative in those estimates when we put together, and this is a tax-based fund. So this is an additional ad valorem taxes as much as it is motor vehicle taxes. Those are things that we don't really have great estimates on when we put together a budget. This year is a little bit different, and typically by now we have received all of our ad valorem monies from the county, but there are several small appeals in place, and they haven't distributed all of their ad valorem taxes for the year. And so I don't know if those are actually going to come to us in December with that distribution, or if they won't come until January. But at any rate, in this case, for this one fund, I've estimated more in expenditures than I really anticipate coming in, but I wanted to give us the authority to be able to distribute anything that does come in. Of course, we're only giving to them what comes in from the county between now and the end of the year. And again, these first two funds, even though they are mill levy supported funds, none of these budget amendments have any impact on the ad valorem taxes that are collected for either one of those funds. The equipment reserve fund is one that we have just started to really use in a little bit different manner over the last couple of years, and last year and this year, in that we're able to set aside dollars for purchases in that fund. We're using it a little more strategically than we have in the past. So for instance, this year we had the sale of a vehicle, so we deposited that revenue into the equipment reserve fund, and then we turned around and purchased a used vehicle with those same dollars. So that's a higher expense, but we did have an offsetting revenue for it, but we just didn't anticipate that last year when we put together this year's budget. So that's why you have a proposed amendment for the equipment reserve fund. So it's situations like that where we're using the revenue that became available so we can make those purchases of equipment. In the land bank fund, this was when we put together the 22 budget, we had anticipated that we would do something more in 21. It was a lower budget authority amount in 22, but in fact, the sale and the revenue from the sale of those properties in the coves came in 22. And so we're proposing that this fund be closed out in 2022. What we would ask is that sometime between now and the end of the year, the land bank trustees could meet and make a decision as to what they'd like to do with the remaining funds. This does give the authority to do that. However, if we decide that we don't have time to do that, that balance can roll over to next year, and we can do the same thing next year. We did not actually create a budget in 2023, so we would just amend that budget in 23 to allow you to do something with those funds in that year. At a minimum, we would probably want to go ahead and transfer the funds back to where their initial $10,000 back that we initially placed in that fund. And then there are some, we would like to make the debt service transfer to the debt service fund. We haven't done that yet. But those are the conversations we'd like to have with the land bank trustees.
Whoever those people are.
The wastewater improvement fund, this fund and the proximity park, they're both special sales tax funds. And when we put together the budget for 2022, we did not anticipate the base grant that we received and the need for matching funds. And so in both of those funds, we drew money from them to create the matching, the match for the base grant award that we received this year. And so each one of those, of course, needs to have the budget amended so that transfer falls within our budget authority for 2022. In both cases, the cash was available to make those transfers. The water utility fund, This is one where we also did not budget for a reserve, but we did have some adjustments to our expenditures over the course of the year, higher than expected expenses for chemical supplies, the vehicles purchased, and just waterline construction expenses in general. And I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning of our conversation, but when we put together our 23 budget, we started to include reserves in some of these funds so that you had a little bit of flexibility. We didn't used to do that, and so it will probably, hopefully cause us to not have as many budget amendments going forward, but it does, when you do it this way, you do have the opportunity to look at each one of those funds individually to see exactly where your expenditures are falling out. So those are all of the funds that are included in the budget amendment process. If you have questions, we're happy to answer any of those questions about any of these funds or the process.
Any action on this today?
I don't
or
need any
Wednesday?
action, just if you have questions or if you want additional information, we will discuss again next Monday, so you have a second chance to look at it before we publish the notice of public hearing.
Any questions at this time, Commissioner? Questions at this time?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Comments by our city manager?
I have none. Commissioner?
Comments by city commissioners, Commissioner Graves,
I have no comment.
Commissioner Kaler,
And at this time,
Commissioner Clayton.
Potential snow, so that's exciting, obviously. You see people out on the road, obviously.
define exciting.
I'm being optimistic, so, yeah, just that, so be mindful of the roads. I'm sure you will see lots of vehicles out, getting ready for that.
Thank you. I have no comments. That'll move us on to our announcements. November 16th, we have our regular meeting at 10 a.m. here at City Hall. Also, it would be Employee Service Award presentations. November 17th through the 19th is National League of Cities in Kansas City, at the Kansas City Convention Center. And November 21st, we have our study session at 4 p.m. at City Hall. Is there anything else to come before the commission this evening? I'll adjourn.